SD cards. One of the most important things for photographers. It holds all your data, and without your SD card, camera performance doesn't matter. So, can an $8 SD card be a $43 SD card? Let's find out. SD cards are the most important device for anyone who takes pictures or video on a camera. And yes, on a real camera, not a smartphone. And I'm not talking to any of you Instagram photographers on a smartphone, because you're probably just writing to your smartphone's storage device. Also, if you don't have an SD card, camera performance doesn't matter, because it'll just be stored in the camera's memory. And then once it's full, you have to shut it down. And then when it shuts down, they will be lost forever. So, before we start, we have to discover what are the 3 most important features to rate SD card by. First, the capacity. Capacity is measured in gigabytes. The more, the better. Simple enough. However, they'll say 8 gigabytes here. You actually won't be able to hold 8 gigabytes worth of data. This SD card will hold about 7.5 gigabytes. I don't know why, but if you go on Windows, you go into properties on the SD card. It'll give you the actual precise number. Second is speed. You have to measure speed with the program. Writing speed and reading speed are different. Writing speed is how fast the camera or device can write to the SD card, and read speed is how fast it can get data off of it. On the SD card, most of the time they'll say 40 megabytes, 60 megabytes, 80 megabytes per second, but they're only talking about read speeds in an artificial laboratory. So, on my sixth grade science camp, I had one of these SD cards, except it was a 4 gigabyte SD card, and it was super slow. I had a cheap camera, point and shoot camera, one of those small ones that were before smartphones, and I'll take a photo. It'll take like a little bit. It won't take that long to write. But the real slowdowns with the SD card is when you're taking a burst. It had a 3 frame per second burst, which isn't exactly the best, but workable for non-action. So I took a burst, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and because of the bad codec, the JPEG file would be around 6 megabytes. So every time I write, I'll take photos I'll hold down the shutter. It'll go click, 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 and then once I let go of it, it'll take seconds, and it'll say processing, until it'll finally be done and return to live view. So that's one of my first bad experiences with the SD card. Third is the failure rate. This is hard to measure. This is because sometimes external hard drives give you a failure rate, like 1 byte will fail out of every 10 terabytes, something like that. But SD cards don't give that. A cheap workaround is to use dual SD cards slots. However, these are often expensive to get, and some brands aren't integrating them at their full potential. For example, the Canon 60 Mark II. 60 Mark II doesn't have dual SD card slots, even though it costs over $2,000. Neither does the camera I'm working on, but it only costs $500. Sony also doesn't really integrate dual SD card slots until now, with their A9, A7R3, and those lineup. Okay, so if you're gonna use a camera as a main camera, either tell your clients that there is a chance that you're losing your data, or your SD card might fail in one slot and you lose all your data. So if you're gonna get a main camera and you have some money, you should get dual SD card slot. Okay, we have 4 SD cards. We have a cheap 8 gigabyte SD card that costs a mere $6. A Sony 32 gigabyte SD card with the advertised 40 megabytes per second read, which costs around $17. A 32 gigabyte SD card that is $30, that's from SanDisk, and an over-the-top 128 gigabyte SD card that costs $43. So what was the results? So for the 8 gigabyte SD card, this explains it only had a 5 megabyte per second write. This explains my poor performance at my 6th grade trip. Because that means it would take a while. That's why it took so long doing a burst. Its read was slightly better at 10 megabytes per second. For the Sony 32GB SD card, we got an 18 right. It's nowhere close to the 40, and the 40 is probably just the estimate. And for your right, I mean, it's not enough to do anything action related, but it's good enough for normal use. That means if I took a picture with my Sony right now in RAW, it will take slightly over a second to write, which is still too long for some occasions. Its read, a blistering 68 megabytes per second. For this SanDisk 32GB SD card, which is currently my primary SD card, it had a 50 megabyte per second write. This is good enough for action because the Sony a6000, which outputs around 220 megabytes per second in full burst RAW mode, it will process through that in around 5 seconds. So what the camera can capture in 1 second, it can go through in 5 seconds. It's pretty good for its price and for being UHS 1, which is the class of SD cards. It has 64 megabyte per second writes. So, what about the over-the-top 128 gigabyte SD card? Well, it only got 45 megabyte per second write, which is worse than the cheaper 32 gigabyte SanDisk card. That means it's okay for action, but for its price, I think you should get better. It had a super fast read at 73 megabytes per second. As you can see, the 8GB SD card is absolute trash. Price does matter, and the $6 SD card will never be anything at $43. But considering our interesting results with the $30 SD card or the SanDisk 32GB, I think that will still be my primary in the future. We learned that the write speed is the most important thing, with read speeds not being as important. Also, these UHS 1 class, or with only one row of pins, besides this one that goes down, these cards can only get a maximum of 60 megabytes per second write. For that, you have to move up to UHS 2, which is only incorporated for a high-end sports camera like the Sony A9. So, it'll write super fast. The reason it writes super fast is because it has an extra row of pins, so you can get up to 300 megabytes per second. That means cameras like the A9 and the A7R3 will be able to write to the SD card faster. This is necessary because for the A9, 20 frames per second at around the same 20 megabytes raw files, it'll go a lot faster. Also, for the A7R3, this is extremely important because at 10 frames per second and at a blistering 42 megapixel sensor, that means each file is around 40 megabytes. That means it'll be capturing a blistering 400 megabytes per second. That means the highest maximum 300 megabytes per second write is necessary. So, unless you are getting a UHS 2 card, which is a whole different story, maybe you get subscribed for that in the near future, you should aim for the $30 range for high speed and high read and with low failure rates. But make sure you don't go too cheap, or else you'll be plagued with low write speeds and low read speeds and possibly even failures, as I experienced one in my life. Remember to aim for a decent price, like $30. $20 will do if you aren't doing for action. Bye. Remember to subscribe, like, and share. If you like this video, maybe comment about it, share it on your social media, and comment down below what I should do below. You can also include science concepts because I also do science videos on this channel. Bye.